Okay, great stuff. So do you want to talk to us about how you can help the people in this group and the people watching on the Facebook page communicate better?
Yeah, so I'm going to share some content in a minute, just a few slides to kind of reinforce and illustrate the points that I'm making. But so yeah, I work with teams and individuals to enhance how they communicate, but it's predominantly how they communicate human to human. All right, that could be just one-to-one, or that could be one to a group. So it works really, really well with teams, and it really works really well with those individuals that have got a powerful message to share, but find that it's being lost in all the noise. They're drowning in all of that noise that's out there. It's very difficult these days to make sure that your message, your unique bit of communication actually gets through to your audience amongst all of the noise. So I'll share some content, if that's all right. I'll share it now, and we'll talk through. Hopefully it'll spark some conversations. Hopefully you'll metaphorically throw stuff at me, and we'll have a talk about it, and we'll just see how we can make these strategies incredibly real for you. Fantastic. Okay, so it's an odd title, right? It's an odd place to start. When is a presentation not a presentation? Okay, and the answer to that is when it's delivered online. So part of my world I used to speak at events. Okay, and hopefully that will come back again, because I absolutely love it. And when you speak at an event, chances are you're on stage. It's a formal thing. There's a big audience, but you're quite separate from the audience. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to present the best we can, but online it's totally different. Okay, wouldn't it be great, right, if every time we communicated online, we could inject more human into it? All of our online interactions were flavored with more human. And that way our audience will pay more attention, they'll understand our content more, believe what we've got to say, and most importantly, act on what it is we're trying to communicate. And the thing is, we used to be incredibly good at that, but we've seemed to have forgotten some of our power. We've allowed the technology to pick up a lot of the weight, whereas actually it's a human job. The tech's brilliant, right? Brilliant. Look, we wouldn't be able to do this without it, but it's kind of designed more for transactional interactions, whereas us humans are brilliant at the relationship side. And we've never ever been more connected, but we lack what I would refer to as real connection. So a few years ago, I wrote a book all about us, all about how we communicate, and I called it Modern Zombies. Okay, and I made two mistakes when I did that. First of all, first mistake was the title, right? Us, we don't like being called zombies, okay, which made me smile. The second mistake was writing a book, right? People don't read anymore, so the Audible version followed soon after. Okay, so it still massively resonates. Okay, and the gist behind the book is, and the trip across Chelmsford I've got this afternoon, the joy in that is I get out of the house, and a client I've worked with wants copies through his entire organization. So that's lovely, right? So the book still resonates. But the gist is we've moved from a world in which empathy, rapport, and that's human resonance were massively important, but we've traded them in for things that are cheap, easy, and convenient. And if you wish, you can add efficient onto that. So we think cheap, easy, convenient, and efficient is working for us, but it isn't. Okay, it turns out communicating, especially online, is really, really difficult. And we know this is the case because we've fell in love with our devices, all right, and they stole the empathy, the rapport and resonance from us, okay, and we've relied on them to do a lot of the communicating for us. And I used to be a massive people watcher, and then I became a people photographer. It sounds like I've turned into a stalker. right? But I was busy around the country, and instead of just watching people turn more into zombies, I started taking photos. And then I started putting these photos on the screen when I was talking at events. Then people started sharing their photos with me. And more, I became convinced that we're becoming zombies that are lost without our personal devices. What happens is, and this is an issue for us when we're trying to communicate, is we're overwhelmed. Right? There's never been so much stuff. We're drowning in all that noise. Okay, we're incredibly busy, but we're struggling to maintain our focus. It's referred to as a cognitive overload. Right? Crazily, one of the busiest courses I deliver at the moment is a course on time and attention management. Right? It's how do we maintain the attention that we need on the important stuff? Because chances are you are surrounded right now between notifications, emails, all sorts of stuff online, and masses of competing social media. But overwhelm has a evil twin, which is underwhelm, right? Most of the stuff that we're bombarded with is rubbish, right? Just tedious, okay? Massively tedious. And we have a lack of capacity for our attention. So we're getting very used to very short bursts of information, and we're not as good as filtering as we should be. So what are we going to do about it? Okay, so this is what communication looked like. Okay, and it does look like this still if you're very lucky. But what do we see? Okay, we see two people. Okay, we see some focus. We see some body language, mirroring and matching. Okay, of course, we see some social distancing, but you can almost sense that the rapport is building, there's empathy there, and without even listening in, you can probably sense some resonance. Okay, but most of our communication now looks like this. Okay, so what else do we see? Okay, we're a bit overloaded. We've got a screen full of information. Okay, but there are distractions everywhere. Chances are most of these conversations are happening on our devices that we're using for work as well. And emails, doesn't matter if you turn them off, they still want to pop in to your screen. And you've probably got your phone pretty close as well. And the thing is, it's really easy to spot when other people are distracted, because your eyes will disappear off the screen, or you'll see people tapping on their keyboards. Okay, so from a communicator's point of view, it's really difficult to make sure that engagement is going on. So instead of presenting, okay, you can forget some of the rules of presenting, because the skills we now need communicating online are enhanced conversations. Conversations are different from a presentation. Okay, they differ in many ways, but some of the key ways are conversations. We don't often or ever write down what we're going to have in our conversation. Right? If we were doing a presentation, chances are we write it out first, we fill slides with bullet points. Okay, that kind of guides us where we're going. Conversation is far more human, more relaxed. It's smaller, it's more intimate, and it cries out for these human things, which is the empathy and the rapport. So how do we have an enhanced communication conversation? First of all, consider simplicity. Okay, let's battle what's called the curse of knowledge and help our audiences understand what it is we're trying to communicate. So that curse of knowledge, right, we all suffer from it. It's the issue that we have, that it's very difficult to remember what it was like before we knew the stuff we now know. So in the world of finances, it's very difficult for someone who works in finances to remember a time before they knew all that cool stuff about how numbers and finances work. So to make your content as simple as possible without dumbing down, you've got to try and think of a time which no longer exists really, before you knew all of that stuff. And it forces you to prioritize the key things that you want to communicate. It's kind of called the commander's intent. That idea that no plan survives contact with the enemy, right? The commander's intent is the ultimate goal, the ultimate thing that you are looking to achieve when you communicate, your one core key message. So for this 20 minutes, it would be for you to enhance your on-screen conversations and inject your beautiful human superpowers into that. So whatever happens, out of all of the stuff we talk about, all of the strategies and techniques we explore, that's the key thing to take away, right? In future, your online conversations will be massively enhanced because you'll inject more of the human superpowers. One of the ways we can make it simple is we can use schemas, right? These are amazing mental shortcuts. Okay, it's schemas, we all have them, right? They're the brain's way of sifting through a lot of information and not having too much clogging our heads. Let's take the schema of a door. Okay, we all know what a door is. We know what they look like. We know how they work. Okay, but we do come across many different types of door in our travels. But that's okay, because we've got the schema of a door. Roughly, we know what doors do and how they work. So it doesn't matter if we come across a new door, we can still open the thing. Okay, we still know how it works. Use phrases "it's like" to help your audience understand, and use these schemas if you can. So we have a schema, for example, what a meeting looks like, okay, or a film. If you went to a film, we know what that kind of looks and feels like. If you went to a sports event, we know what that kind of looks and feels like. Date night, we know what that looks and feels like. Okay, all of our audience know all those things. So there should be plenty of things that we can refer to. It's like this. And then when we say it's like this, ideally we hook on to some of the schemas. So it's easier for our audience to get it, to understand the stuff that we're talking about. I delivered a talk a while back now, seems a while back, with a group of students at Colchester Uni. And I was talking about the difference between an email culture and a messaging culture. And they were kind of looking at me like I was an old man, right? Looking at emails. You know, and quite rightly so, right? They're dismissive of emails. And it was like, yeah, we don't use emails, old man. All right, we're the messaging generation. And then it occurred to me, I thought, well, yeah, that's true. But you wish, there'll come a time you'll wish you were the email generation, because messaging will just absolutely trounce emails with regards to the amount of volume of noise there is. So, and at the point, there was a stat saying, well, there's already been, in certain formats, 1 trillion messages sent and received. And they looked at me quite rightly, 1 trillion, wow, big number, but don't really know how big. So I had to come up with some form of, well, it's like schema style explanation of what 1 trillion looks like. Okay, so imagine at the end of this, the event today, right? We had a raffle and whoever won gets a jet, right? Cool, right? I'm glad I attended, right? Because I went online and you win a jet, right? And your jet flies at the speed of sound, right? Speed of sound, 343 meters a second, which is 767 miles an hour, right? Whoosh, okay? Sounds really fast, right? If you do your park run at the speed of sound, you'll get round in under 15 seconds. So there's a schema, right? Anyone who's ever run the park run knows what that looks like. 15 seconds, that's a fast park run. If you run a marathon at the speed of sound, it's going to take you just over 2 minutes. Right? Another schema, okay? Wow, that's a very quick marathon. Right, but your jet, right, traveling at the speed of sound, has got a dollar dispenser on the back of it. Weird, huh? Right, so as fast as you fly, dollar bills are being dispensed out the back of your jet. And you're flying at the speed of sound, and the dollars are come flying out the back of your jet. To get rid of $1 trillion, you need to be flying for 14 years at the speed of sound. That's what 1 trillion looks like. Okay, difficult concept. However, if you think about it and work hard at it, you can apply schemas and things that your audience already get to help them understand. Which raises the question, how do you really explain what your business does in a human way? And the way we should do that is, well, it's like this. Okay, it's like when. You know that case when, well, this is what we do when it looks like that. So consider what your clients take away from that interaction. What do they talk about? What do they do next? So 3 years commitment to insurance, right? That's a great story. Okay, so what do they take away? They take away that self-assurance, the lack of kind of issues 1 year after the next. What do they talk about? They talk about kind of being rest assured, being well looked after. So these are the sorts of ways you can communicate in a human way that hooks in to your audience's already existing schemas. And we've got to work a bit harder at helping our audience understand our stuff. So wherever possible, we should avoid abstraction, you know, that kind of technical speak, the jargon that we perhaps would use, and try and find more of a universal or concrete language. It's like this, or it's like when that happens. What does it look, my favorite question, what does it look and feel like? And as soon as you can answer what it looks and feels like, you're getting somewhere towards making it really understandable for your audience. Imagine if we were trying to explain what a ladybird was to a couple of kids, right? We wouldn't really benefit from talking science. We need to talk in a language that they understand. So a ladybird, right? Pretty weird, not a bird, not a lady, okay, but it's a bit like a smartie, but don't eat it, right? Because this smartie's got legs. Oh, by the way, it can fly, all right? And you start exploring what does the language kind of look and feel like for this particular audience. And one of the big tricks we miss is a lot of our content, we should inject into that something that's unexpected. So what was it, Julie, your video in the snow, that outtake, you slip in the humor associated with that, very unexpected from an audience point of view, massively memorable. Okay, so the unexpected stuff really gets the audience to pay attention, which is tough in our ocean of noise. Okay, so anything that you can do that's unexpected will break this human pattern that we have. Us humans get very, we adapt very quickly to consistency. Okay, and if you break that pattern, we sit up and take notice. Our brain's very aware of change. So surprise gets people's attention, and then the interest keeps it. Okay, so imagine that outtake was right at the beginning of the video. Okay, you've hooked your audience with something that's humorous and fun, and then you can explain or explore your key points. If we violate the audience's schemas of what they think it's going to be like, we're onto a winner. Okay, so presentations, we know what the format normally is, but what if you said, right, the presentation 20 minutes, I'm going to do it in 5. Okay, that's a surprise, that's going to be different. What if it's not a presentation, we're now going to play a game? Or actually it's not a presentation, I want to take you on a bit of a mystery tour. And then suddenly there's a lot of unexpected aspects to the conversation. And as soon as you introduce a gap in the knowledge of your audience, they want it filled, right? So it's the same reason, okay, we tend to watch really bad films to the end. Okay, us humans, we're ridiculous, right? We want to know what happens. As soon as there's a gap in our knowledge, we want that to be filled. And it might be absolutely rubbish, but chances are we watched it to the end just to see who did it or what happened. And don't forget to allow some emotion, okay? Hence, what does it feel like for your audience? A lot of our communication aims at kind of an analytical frame of mind, which focuses our audience to think. But if we open up a bit of an emotional frame of mind, it allows our audience to feel. And for our audience to take action, which we want them to do, they need to care about our stuff. Right? And when I talk about modern communication and mobile technology specifically, I talk about the harm it's doing to our younger audience. It's doing harm to us as well, but massive implications for our younger audience. And I talk about it being similar in damage to smoking during pregnancy. Right? Back then, we didn't know how destructive smoking during pregnancy was. And I think there'll come a time in the future where we'll look at these mobile devices that we thrust into our kids' hands as soon as they go to senior school. And we'll look back and realize how dangerous and destructive that was, similarly to how we look back at smoking during pregnancy. So consider how you tap in to what your audience care about. Use the word you plenty. If we're talking about insurance, talk about the stuff that you are interested in, that you want to protect. If we're talking about finances, talk about the stuff that's important to you and your loved ones, and generate some of that emotional feel. And then please, my big implore to the audience is tell more stories. Please tell more stories, right? We love them, right? Us humans, we love a story, okay? Not a rambling 15-minute thing, just a punchy 2-minute illustration of your key points, right? Prove your point, illustrate your point with a 2-minute illustration, okay? We're brilliant at them, okay? We're great at telling them and we're great at remembering them, and they help your audience to act once your information has sunk in. Okay, and the reason this is because every time you refer in your stories to, let's say, a different emotion, a different sense, it's like fireworks going off in the brain. If we just talk about stuff, content, small part of the brain responsible for remembering that. But if we talk about lots of different kind of senses, different parts of the brain are responsible for processing. Hence, it's like fireworks going off in the mind. That's why stories are so easy to remember and retell. And they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant at generating rapport and overcoming any resistance, whether that resistance is conscious or unconscious. We love a real anecdote or story. Now, your 2-minute stories, they need just enough color. Okay, who was there? What did it look like? A few names, maybe. How did it feel? Just enough color. And then you've got to get to the point. Okay, so no need to hang around. Get to the point and know what the point is for your stories. Know why you're telling that particular story. And if you tell stories, all right, good news is you can charge more for your products, okay, your services. If you tell stories, if you sell wine, for example, if we went to the shops now and bought a bottle of wine, we turned the wine around and it had a story of where it was made and the family, a bit of family history and a bit of a story about the wine, how it was created, that could be more expensive. If we sell goods on eBay and have a bit of a story associated with it, it's been in our family for this long, we've really enjoyed it because, and we tell a story, we can charge more for that product. So if I dig out 2 cereals from my cupboard, okay, please don't judge me, right? I've got some Lizzie's low sugar granola in my cupboard, and I've got some Kellogg's Crunchy Nut, probably not so good for you, brand leading product. However, right, for some reason, Lizzie in a low sugar granola is charging me more than, let's say, the brand leader. Why? How come? How come I'm paying more for Lizzie's stuff, right? Well, if you turn the packages round, with the Kellogg's, you get nutritional information plus a bit of advertising. You turn Lizzie round, nutritional information, of course, but then you get Lizzie's story. And it started when she was making granola in her B&B back in the 80s, right? That might not even be Lizzie, right? I'm assuming it is, right? And the story might not be true, but I'm also assuming that is true, right? But it feels as though I know her, okay? And it feels like this is what it was like to create the granola back in the day. And she's charging me more money for it, and I'm paying it, okay? Because I feel more attached and associated to Lizzie's product. I'm even calling it Lizzie's. I don't even know who Kellogg is. I guess Mr. Kellogg, I haven't got a picture of Mr. Kellogg, so I can't make the same associations with that product compared to Lizzie's. So consider what are your stories, right? And you've got them. You've got loads of stories. It's a bit like being put on the spot and saying, right, you're funny, tell me a joke. I can't think of any. Stories, you've got to kind of sit down and work out what stories do I tell for this, for this, for this, for this, for this. And you'll have hundreds, right? If you've got kids, you know, you've got loads of stories. If you've ever been up a mountain, you've got loads of stories. If you've ever run a race, you've got loads of stories. They don't have to be business related, but they could illustrate points that you're trying to make in a business context. So a whistle-stop tour through a host of stuff. And we've got time for some questions. I'm going to come out of the screen now, and hopefully I'll be able to see you all again. Right? We've got time for some questions, and then hopefully we'll spark a few conversations. Right, I've got a blank screen. Chris, fill in for me while I try and make my tech.
Yeah,
work.
so I'll start while you switch your screen off, Nick. I'll start with the first conversation. At the minute, the digital world is what we're reliant on to communicate. But one of the things that I've tried to do over the last couple of years is just manage my digital environment in a bit of a better way so that it's not so much of a distraction. Share with me your thoughts about how you might advise people to do that.
So yeah, oddly enough, the tech's pretty good at this, right? So the technology companies have started to sit up and take notice that we are massively distracted. There was a long time where they were stealing our eyeballs and doing it on purpose, still doing it, right? Facebook's still the best at stealing your eyeballs. You go on to check. So we go on to see what's going on, okay, at the live event. And then we don't, when the live event finishes, we don't leave Facebook and crack on with our business day. We scroll down, and then there's something else leads to something else. Before we know it, an hour's gone past, and we're watching somebody's cat. We don't even know who they are, just falling asleep on a sofa. And, you know, it's eaten our time. So most of our devices will have a do not disturb function, we'll have a timer function, we'll have functions if we explore, will enable us to separate the time that we need. This is business time, and this is my relaxed time. Okay, so we separate our chunks of time.
Yeah.
For me, the easiest way is just scrolling up and hitting airplane mode on my device, right? And it dawned on me a little while ago. Okay, airplane mode, in theory, was designed for those people who were getting on planes, right? Who were going to fly. Turns out, actually, it's designed for those people who really want to fly, nothing to do with a plane, right? If you really want to fly in life and business, then scroll up and hit airplane mode, crack on with the stuff that's really important, and then go back and catch up.
It's focus mode, isn't it? Not airplane mode. It's focus mode. Spot on. Has anybody else got any? So Fiona's got a question. So we'll go with Fiona.
That was brilliant, Nick. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
In terms of getting in front of people, whether it's online or human, nerves are still real. So face to face, I was given some really good advice about presenting to people, and that is make the decision to enjoy it. I just found that so powerful, and it works. Mm-hmm. Can you still use that online, or are there some other tactics that you would recommend?
So great suggestion. Okay. We like doing business and communicating with people that are fun, okay, and who seem to be enjoying themselves. Enthusiasm is infectious. It's a bit more difficult online to spread that enthusiasm, but we can. Okay, it just needs to be a little bit bigger than what we're kind of getting used to. The body language doesn't come into it as much as it would if we were doing the face-to-face stuff, but you can up the ante a little bit, especially with our voices. Okay, and this is kind of odd, right? We've all got the same tools available to us, but rarely do you come across someone who's talking with such enthusiasm that they're unleashing the velvet in their voice, and the speed changes and the pitch changes, and you can see how excited and how into their content that they are, right? And I'm assuming our stuff's good, right? So we've got lots of cool stuff to talk about and share. Okay, and that's why I think it's helpful to move away from this idea that we're presenting online and having conversations, because a conversation is in theory less nervy, right? It doesn't have to be formal. Okay, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing my slippers. It's all cool, right? I've just got some great information to share about product. So your blog, for example, and your presentation that you're building, okay, think about your audience from the perspective of, okay, what really works for them? What do they really want to hear about? And then get really enthused about, actually, I can help you with that stuff. And if it's good, why wouldn't we want to scream about it?
You know what's interesting, Fiona? The starting point for me on that, and I don't know if we've spoken about this before. Funny enough, Richard Curtis at the minute, the Love Actually guy, has got a campaign to make sure that the money that we invest for our financial future is. Yeah, it's that little video is really, really good.
Yeah,
and he's an amazing storyteller, isn't he, Richard Curtis? So
definitely.
you'd learn from that. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
No,
Julie? Yeah, sure.
It was really interesting. I've made quite a few notes actually. I've been doing a few little videos, again, sort of business related. How long do you think really they should last before people would say, oh God, I'm not watching this anymore? I know a lot of it's down to content, and I do try to be imaginative.
I haven't noticed, Julie. Is that, you talking about the bush now? Are we talking about we're back to the bush, are we?
Yeah, the thing is, we could probably answer that question for ourselves by a quick LinkedIn experiment, right? And LinkedIn will play a bit of a video probably without the sound, and you can tell instantly whether it's going to be worth watching or not. And we're so overloaded, and infinite scrolling hasn't helped, because it's so easy to go on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. I think if you aim for 2 minutes of high impact video, it's not too much to ask. Anything more, and you've got to really question, how good is my stuff? Okay, if you can't get your message across in 2 minutes, like a story, if your story rambles longer than 2 minutes, okay, you've got to ask yourself your question, am I adding stuff that I don't need to add? All right, put yourself in your audience's shoes. Just go online and check out a few videos and see at what point you're switching off.
It's interesting, isn't it? We've experimented with video in our business for a few years now, and we used to do like 20-minute videos that nobody ever watched. And when we moved to the format where we were trying to make a concise point in a minute, that's when we started to get a lot of video engagement. But trying to tell a story that concisely, or make a point that concisely, is difficult. So what's your tip on how to do that effectively?
So if you know what the point is, start with the point, right? What's the point of telling this particular story? Okay, and it's your story. Okay, you were there, you know what it's like, you know what it felt like. Okay, what are the minimum amount of stuff that I need to share to allow my audience to know what it was like, right? What it felt like, what just enough detail, but always aiming with the point. Okay, this is the point I'm telling the story, just enough detail so you feel invested. Okay, and if it's your story, you were there, okay, you know the impact behind it. Okay, so you're going to tell it with enthusiasm, even if you've told it many times before. Okay, rehearse it. Sounds weird, right? Rehearse your own stories, rehearse it and see if you can tell that story in 2 minutes, or is it a 5-minute story? If it's 5 minutes, what are you going to cut out? What bits don't we need to know to get to that point? And it takes some practice, but if it's a quality story and making a quality point, it's worth the practice.
Yeah. We've got time for one more question. Who would like to ask? Anybody else? No, that's it. That was Nick. That was really, really good. Thank you for that. That point you made about schemas was amazing, because that, you know, comparison, I think can benefit every business, can't it? You know, how do we simplify it using things that people understand fully? So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that.